Would you get excited about learning opportunities for your children that do not involve worksheets, do not involve online courses? I definitely would. And do you look forward to outings, community? We've talked about that so much on this Facebook group, Spark Homeschool Parent. The importance of community for ourselves as parents, but also the importance of community for our children. Is that something that you look forward to? Is that something that your children look forward to? I bet it is. Would you invest your time to help foster a community like this, one that doesn't rely on workbooks, one that doesn't rely on online classes, involves you together in community and involves your children together in community? I bet you would. And that is what we're going to be talking about today. How to organize a successful homeschool co-op that's enjoyable and educational. I want to welcome you. I'm Diana Rolston, and this is Spark Homeschool Parent. Each week, we tackle different fears, different questions, different ideas that come up in educating our children at home. For some of you that are just new to tuning in, Spark Homeschool Parent is an acronym. S is the strengths. That's where we start, where I encourage you to start on your education journey with your children, discovering their strengths, their weaknesses, also your strengths and weaknesses. And then we move on to purpose. So important, and we've talked about that many times. Why are you homeschooling? And just like, what is the purpose, the overall purpose? And then sort of whittling that down to your more short-term goals and purposes. And then we got attitude. Learning should be fun. We know it really should be, but sometimes it's not easy to make it fun. We're going to be touching on that. Actually, that's a big part of what we're talking about today. R is reflection. We always need to go back, reassess our goals, where we are with them, and make changes. It's always a good step. And then K, that's where we are now. Keep on going. And this interview that I'm having today, I'm so excited about. And we're going to be talking about co-oping. And I think it just fits well on this keep on going portion of the Spark journey, because it's when we get excited about planning interesting topics and different ways of learning for our children, it just really keeps us going. So I'm really excited about the conversation today. This Facebook group, Spark Homeschool Parent, is just a small part of the conversations that I have with many, many homeschool families, parents that educate their children at home. I also am at local homeschool meetings, so I love doing that. There are also lots of people that I meet with in person or contact me, message or email. I put my email up on our welcome post, the last one that went out. So I just enjoy talking with parents that are educating their children at home. So reach out. I would love to have those conversations. This conversation today is for you if you're just wondering, maybe you're new to educating your children at home, you've heard about co-ops, you're not sure what they are, how to get started. We're going to be talking also about how to create a successful, enjoyable, and educational co-op, and how to get started. How to start a co-op without taking on all the responsibility for yourself. That's a trap that many of us find ourselves in sometimes. So I have a guest that I'm really excited to be talking with today. She has been homeschooling for 19 years. Her 4 children have now graduated from educating at home. She is one very creative woman, and she always used that creativity to create strategies to help make learning fun and inviting. She realized the importance of inviting other families into those group fun learning experiences. She says that many of her and her children's fondest memories of those 19 years were in those co-op groups. So that's very encouraging. She likes to share some of those ideas at South Haven Press, which we'll talk about at the end of our conversation. And since her children have graduated now from home education, she is an emergency supply teacher. Lucky, lucky children in the public school system. And she is also running a support group for moms with preschoolers and teaching Sunday school. She enjoys her gardening and she continues to create. She lives in Southampton with her husband and their youngest son on the beautiful shores of Lake Huron, if you're not familiar. I have Sherine Boville with me today. Let me just bring her in here. Hello, it's so nice to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. I just want to jump right into it. I would love for you to share some stories with regards to co-ops.
Great. Yeah, so when my children were young, I had my oldest Bethany, then Jocelyn. We used to attend a play group in town called Mums and Tots, and it was great. We went out on Thursdays, and I should mention that growing up, I always wanted to be either a nurse or a teacher, and I decided to go into nursing. But this whole idea of teaching to me was very fun. I used to play school all the time with my kids. My family thinks I chose the wrong profession, but anyway, we would go to this play group, and I thought it was wonderful because it was like free play, but there was also a bit of structure to it. There was like a craft time, and then there was a circle time. And to me, I thought this is so important that my children are learning that sometimes you have to sit in a circle and listen to somebody else. Everybody's doing the same thing, and only one person's talking. So to me, I thought this was wonderful. We had this little circle time, and then people would take turns doing it. They'd have like stories and like finger plays and special things like that. It just like 10, 15 minutes of structure, and we had big snacks. So Mums and Tots was wonderful. And then I had another child, Erin, and then Bethany started. I started homeschooling Bethany, and that was going along quite well. We could still go to Mums and Tots, but then the year when all the kids her age attended senior kindergarten. It was when senior kindergarten was like only every other day type of thing. I think it was Thursdays. And the year that senior kindergarten was on Thursdays, we would go to Mums and Tots, like there's no one for her to play with. And at my church, we had so Bruce Power, the big nuclear power plant, is the main employer where we are. So if you want to show the map, so we live in, on the shores of Lake Huron. That little red dot there is where we live. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere. Nearly everybody.
In Ontario too, just for anyone who doesn't know.
Oh yes, this is Ontario. It's very far from Toronto and quite far from Ottawa, about 7 hours away. But all the people, the majority of people working here work at the Ontario Hydro or Bruce Power plant. And then suddenly everybody left. There was a change in hands, and all the young families left. So there was no young families at our church, and basically Bethany had no friends. So we need to find somebody that she fits with. So I didn't know anybody who was homeschooling. I knew people who used to homeschool, but nobody who still homeschooled. So it was really quite a lonely time. And then I heard about a group in Hanover, which is an hour and 10 minutes drive away, or an hour's drive away. And okay, well, I'm going to go, because when you live where we do, like it's not nothing. If you can find something, you go for an hour. So I drove down to Hanover to this group. And we met in a church. There was a gym. The kids could play sports. I thought this was fabulous. And that very first day that I went, so Erin was 1 at this time. And so I had 3 kids. I met another lady with 3 children, 2 girls and a boy, just like me, but they were all a little bit younger. And we sort of connected really well. And she was looking for something to do too. I said, hey, you know what? I would love to have a learning thing for kids, like especially for Bethany and Jocelyn, the older ones. Would you be interested in coming to my house? I know it's an hour's drive for you, but our kids connect and we could do something. And she's like a Martha Stewart in the flesh. Like she's like, more than Martha Stewart, really. The idea is that she's amazing. And I knew other friends whose kids were in senior kindergarten, but they only went every other day. So if we could meet on a day when they weren't in kindergarten, then they could be part of it too. So was the beginning of our very first homeschool co-op. So it's called the Learning Circle. And we got together once a week, And we did things about it because I said, you have to have a bit of structure. The kids need to learn. Sometimes you have to sit around and listen to someone else talking. So we would pick a theme and we would do activities on that theme. And coming up to Easter, so this friend Tammy, she had this amazing, we're not there yet, she had this amazing dress up closet. And so she had all these dress up clothes. And this castle you can see in the background was made out of styrofoam, 14 feet long. It had a working drawbridge. My brother had built that for me. So we said, hey, let's have the kids dress up as the Easter story. And every week we'll take pictures, and this will be how they know what Easter is all about. This is how we taught them what Easter was about. So Tammy had the costumes, I had the castle, and I had the space, big empty room in my basement. And so that's what we did at the learning. We did a couple other things as well, but that was really fun. But then at the end of that year, what happened? Well, the kids that were joining us that went to public school, they're now in grade 1. So now we're back to, just Tammy and me, and between us we had 6 kids. But then she started a rather academic homeschooling program. We were both very focused on our academics, and so did I. My kids were pretty involved in what they had to do with their regular school. But one of the courses that we chose to do was a history program called Story of the World. And it was just me and my kids. We were going through this book. You could read along. It was sort of history is written as a story for kids. The first book is supposed to be for grade 1, but really there's so much detail and you could use it for up to grade 4. And I had hosted a harvest party at Halloween. We don't really do Halloween, but we had friends over for a party, and other friends came along, and I met this homeschooling mom, Paula, who had only 1 child. I had 3 children at this point. I was pregnant with my 4th. And she had 1 child and needed something to do. So, hey, do you want to join us? We're using this book called Story of the World, and we can do fun stuff together. Story of the World is set up in such a way that there's a bit that you read in the text, and then there's a workbook that goes along with it, and it's got like coloring pages, and there's questions to answer, and then there's about 4 or 5 activities every week that you can choose from. And I love to be creative. I said, I'm going to choose these activities, but you and your son can join us. And she thought it was great. And then another family joined in with us that found out that we were homeschooling. So now suddenly I have 3 families that live close enough to me, like they're 20, 30 minutes away, but closer than Tammy. And we got together every single week. So here's a picture of us. We had Olympics. You can see them dressed up in Dad's white T-shirt. We played Olympics in our basement. Now, all of these ideas came straight from Story of the World. I can't really take any credit for them. The top picture is their ice cream boats. So one of the things the Greeks had these special boats called triremes. So one of the activity ideas was you get a brick of chocolate ice cream and a knife, and you carve it into the shape of a boat. I mean, isn't that cool? Kids got right into that. And so there's a whipped cream sea. But these are just ideas straight out of Story of the World. So nothing that I had to do special, except go through, like on my summer holidays, I would sit in the hammock and I would read through flip through the whole year's worth if you're going to do this activity and that activity, because I kind of like to be in charge. And I'm the one with all the stuff, and I'm hosting it. So the mom, Lisa, the mom of the other 4 children, she was great at preparing stuff. So I said, we're going to make houses out of clementine crates and cardboard. And she's, well, I'll rip the top of the cardboard off so we have the wiggly side for the roofs, and I'll paint them all. So she was quite happy to do all those things. So the 3 of us, and I tended to be like the ringleader of the group. We had space in our house. They would come to my place. It worked really well because I was more focused on academics than they were. So my kids, the other ones came at 10. My kids had already done their math and their English. They had it all done before the other kids came for the day. And so we did this co-op for 4 years straight. They came every Thursday. It was my kids' favorite day of the week. They came at 10, and we loosely started when everyone showed up. One of the moms would take turns reading the passage, reading the book, and then we would ask the kids questions. As they listened, they would do the coloring page, then we'd do the math work, and then we had recess for an hour or 2 of free. And they went outside and they played whatever they were learning in history. It was great because they would remember, like when we're studying, the Picts, the English, the tribes in England, they would paint their faces blue. So that was one of the activities. You get blue face paint. So we have blue face paint on all our kids, and they're running around. We've got an acre here, so they run into the woods, and they were having a lovely time.
I love it.
So that's kind of an idea, actually. So I had read a little bit about Charlotte Mason, the idea of having your children use living books. make it interesting, and then give them a little bit of time to work, and then let them play what they're learning. So we didn't really do a Charlotte Mason approach too much, but this idea of playing what you learn, and then they've got friends. So now they suddenly have recess. So they're hearing about their friends at school. They have recess. Well, we have recess too. And it's not just the kids, because the mom, we had recess too. We had however, the three of us, we would just sit and chat. Like they brought their lunch, they all brought their lunches, and we would eat lunch together. And in the afternoon, we would do whatever the scheduled activity was. And then they'd leave by 5 or 6 or whenever they left.
Nice.
So that in the first year, the ancient world was my favorite year of that. After this new family joined us, so now we've got 9 children. We were learning about the Trojan War, and I said, hey, I've got this castle downstairs, and we've been making like some of the activities, like making armor and weapons. Wouldn't it be cool to make a movie? So I said, well, we could do this. We could, the kids could make the weapons and the clothes. And I found an Usborne book of the children's retelling of the story of the Trojan War. I read it, and then I wrote a précis of each chapter, like the main point. And we had our 3 families, but we decided we needed more to make a movie. You need a couple more people. So we had, by this point, found out of a few other families in town. So we said, hey, you guys want to be part of making a movie with us? And so we conscripted them. Each family was given a précis of a chapter, and they were asked to turn it into a movie script. So each chapter of the book was written by a different family. And then we typed it all out, and the kids acted it out. So I think it took us 21 or 23 hours of filming. We borrowed someone's video camera. We didn't have any video camera. We have this big empty room in our basement. We painted one wall blue. So any pictures we took in front of that wall, I have a little brother who's 12 years younger than me. He was in high school at the time. And he took our pictures, and he removed the background, and he would place them like in a cave or on the ocean, and he could change the background for us. So that we had a movie of the Trojan War acted out by the kids. And like it was a lot of fun. It was a ton of work. And by this point, Luke was born. So now I have a 1-year-old also crawling around. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. So that was a way of, we added a few new families. We grab more people. Sometimes you need new people, and you have to give them structure. Say, hey, we're trying to make a movie. This is what's going to be required of you. You have to show up every Thursday for 10 weeks or whatever, and we expect you to memorize your lines. You're going to have to do this and that. So the kids in the movie were from the age of 3. Our oldest actor was 12, and our videographer, I think, was 13. So,
yeah. And that's what educating at home is all about, eh?
Yeah, the movie doesn't make any sense unless you know the story. But it's quite hilarious to watch now. Like we had the boy who was, we got Helen of Troy and Menelaus, his wife, her husband. So Helen of Troy was 12 and Menelaus was 8, and there was about 2 feet difference between them. She was like that much bigger than him. It was quite hilarious. But anyways, so those children are all grown up now. But so that was kind of a neat, an offshoot of our Story of the World co-op. So I have to say my favorite memories were from that very first year, because it was, I think, the most interesting in the ancient world. So we carried on with that co-op. Next year we did the next year of Story of the World, and then all of a sudden Canada becomes a thing. But there's no great Canadian history curriculum. But Story of the World was great the way it went along, and we found a book called Modern History Through Canadian Eyes. And basically what this woman had done is she'd gone through, these are all the stages of history, and these are the things you should know about in Canadian history. Here are some resources, including Story of the World, Story of Canada, some other books. These are the chapters in these books that relate to this time period in Canadian history. And so by this point, we've been going 2 years with Story of the World, watching how the program goes. And we said, well, we're smart enough that we can do this ourselves. So I said, okay, we're going to use this in conjunction with Canadian history. So now we're doing 2 co-ops on a day. We're going to do the morning. We're going to have to Story of the World done all just in the morning now. Then we're going to have lunch. Then we're going to do a Canadian history co-op. But there's other people maybe that want to join us for that. So we put it out there. Anybody who wants to join us for Canadian history co-op, you're welcome to come. The expectation is, if you're a family coming, as the mom, you have to take a turn teaching. And what do we mean by teaching? What we mean by teaching is you have to provide content. You have to provide a coloring page. You have to provide math work. then you have to provide an activity, exactly like our Story of the World setup. So we said, this works. We're going to do it. So you got to find your own resource. You got to make it interesting. And some people were really a bit reluctant to teach, but they did a great job. We had various different teachers, different styles. And then we also figured that by this point, our children are a little bit older. They're already in like grade 3 and 4, the oldest ones. We really want them to have some public speaking experience. So we said, okay, they're going to have to do a project. So each of them is going to choose a character from history, and they're going to have to do a presentation on it. So the Canadian History Co-op went on for 2 years, coinciding with years 3 and 4 with our Story of the World Co-op. And so that picture you saw earlier was our Pioneer Day, when we had just actually built a playhouse. And so we pretended it was a housewarming for our new house. And the boys built furniture for the playhouse, and we made ice cream. We made butter, and we ended up making applesauce right there. Everyone had to come dressed up. You can see our little covered wagon in the background.
Nice.
It was a great day, and we invited people to this that weren't even part of the homeschool, weren't even part of the Canadian History Club. So because my heart was always, there's so many kids out there who are not connected, and they really need the social. Like I know how my children really need the social connection. So I have to say, so the Story of the World Co-op that turned into this Canadian History Co-op was probably one of our best memories. And my son Aaron, he's at the University of Waterloo studying architecture at the moment, and he is rooming with Tyler, who was one of the boys that were in the Olympic Games from that history co-op from so many years ago. They were 3 when they met, and they're like best friends today. So that was pretty cool.
So important to remember that there's so much to be learned through families getting together and doing co-ops, the academic portion for sure, but so much that we learn. And you mentioned the other moms getting together while the children are out having recess, like even just that, we know how important it is for us parents to be in community when we're educating our children at home, but also the social aspect for our children, which is what we'll touch on.
Because we each have different gifts to give. Like I had 4 children. I was pretty exhausted, but then Paula had one son, and she just really wanted friends for him. But you know what? She would come into my house, and she would do my dishes because they were still in the sink, and I felt so horrible. Like, Paula, don't do my dishes. But that she's serving me by doing my dishes for me, and I'm serving her by teaching her son, and well, not that I did all the teaching, but providing friends for her son. So it really worked both ways. And it was we could minister to each other.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was pretty cool.
Here's the next picture. Whoops. Did you want to talk about this?
Yeah. So then what happened was we finished Story of the World, 4 years. We said this was great. We really enjoyed it, but we'd like to do history again, another 4-year cycle, but we really want a bit more of a Christian influence. So we discovered a curriculum called Tapestry of Grace. And Tapestry of Grace is a bit like Story of the World, and it takes 4 years to go through. It's based on history, but it's a bit more it's more of a Charlotte Mason-y approach in that you don't have a text that you read. You actually use living books. So you purchase books that have to do with each topic. And they sort of divide it up into different age levels. It's a classical approach. So you've got the grammar stage, the lower and upper grammar, dialectic, and rhetoric. The grade 1 to 3 has a set of books, grade 3 to 6, 6 to 9, 9 to 12. They all study the same topic at the same time, but there's different sets of books to use. So by the time we got there, our oldest kids were in grade 5, and our youngest are now in grade 1-ish, almost, kindergarten. So what we had now was we have now older children and younger children. But we're pretty experienced now, these 3 moms that have been together for 4 years. So we said, hey, let's do this. We would like our older children to discuss what they're learning with other people who are learning the same thing. So that was the dialectic phase. So we had 3 kids in this level, and they're going to do their homework at home. And when we get together for our co-op day, they're going to have a discussion, and they have to answer questions and sort of not really debate, but really interact with the material. So we had different levels, and this was great because I really wanted the academics for my kids. And then the younger ones are going to do other stuff that's a bit more fun. And I have more than one space in my house, so they're going to be in different locations instead of everybody all together. So one of the things that Tapestry of Grace is great at, it is actually has built specifically for co-ops. There's a section, this is what you do with your co-op.
Nice.
And they set in 9-week chunks. So there's 4 9-week units in the year, and they suggest having a unit celebration at the end. So this here is a medieval feast at the end of our medieval unit. So we all made our own costumes. Then there was only 3 families in it, and we thought we needed a couple more people. So we invited Tammy with all the costumes, Martha Stewart Tammy, and the decor is mostly her. Made it absolutely fabulous. That's her you can see on the left in the very fancy dress. We invited a bunch of other, by this point, we know of other homeschooling families, and I think there were probably 20 or 30 people. Everyone brought a different dish, and it was just a really neat celebration, an opportunity to get out. And so that's what that one was. And I think, do I have one more picture?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So what happened though so I need to back up a bit. So remember I told you how I'd driven an hour to this homeschool co-op where I met Tammy, and the kids were playing sports in the gym. So that was my first experience with a co-op. So I went there for several weeks. This is back when Aaron's only 1, my children are very, very young. And there was somebody who was going to do a special presentation. And I thought, this is great. I wonder what they're going to teach the kids. And she had a piece of paper, and she folded it up, and then she cut it with scissors, and she opened it. It was the shape of a cross. I thought, well, that's pretty cool. I drove an hour for this. I thought, you know what? That's not okay. If I'm going to drive an hour for something, it needs to be more than folding a paper cross. So I'm a little bit of a problem solver, and I kind of force my way into things, I'm afraid. And so I spoke up. I said, you know what? Maybe we could do something a little bit better than this. At this co-op, it's great that we have a gym. It's great that there's actual real homeschoolers who are homeschooling. But can we do something maybe a little bit structured? And Tammy, the Martha Stewart friend, was there too. And she said, yeah, we need to do something better than this. So we actually did an absolutely phenomenal thing the following year. We had a bunch of different choices that children could choose. So we had a lady who owned a chocolate making business. And she said,
Nice.
I'm going to teach children about business. So what we're going to do is the children are going to be given, $20, and they're going to be in groups, and they're going to have to choose a food business. They're going to make some type of food. They're going to plan it. They're going to learn how to advertise it. And then in 4 weeks' time, we're going to have a day when everybody buys from them. So some people made popcorn, some people made candies on a stick. I forget what all the things were, but they learned about, and they made posters, and they had like a little thing where you go around buying stuff. So that was a really neat experience for them learning about business from a businesswoman, lady with the chocolate store. And then Tammy did a thing on cultures of the world. She dressed up as a different culture every week, and she brought in oodles of things, and she brought in food from different cultures. It was like a geography of the world thing. I did a little French class where kids came and I taught them some basics of French. And there was a couple other things, and it was really great.
Yeah,
this
nice
is what
idea.
this is what a homeschool co-op should be like. But then the people who were responsible for getting the church for us to meet at were leaving the church. So you can't really use the church when they're not there anymore. And nobody wanted to teach after we did this incredible year. I guess maybe the bar was too high. Nobody was interested in teaching. And so I said, well, I guess we can't do anything. And at that point, I thought, well, this is so good to have people together. And just down the street, so this is almost an hour from my house, but I've been driving an hour to go to this place. I thought people can drive the other way. There was a gymnastics club down the road. I knew someone who taught art. I said, you know what? Why don't you guys come to my house? I'll get my art teacher. She'll teach art for us. I pay her a set fee, so the more kids that come, the cheaper it's going to be per person. And then we'll go to gymnastics. And we can pay the people. If you don't want to teach, you have to pay some. It just doesn't, it's not all free. And then we'll do one other thing. So we did that for a number of years. We called it school. That group was meeting at my house. And I guess that's how I met these other people that we dragged into our making the movie and whatnot. So this school group had been meeting for a while at my house. But in your introduction, you said how important it is to organize a co-op without doing everything. But you see, I was hosting. It was at my house. So I cleaned my house before and I cleaned my house after. I wrote the newsletter. I collected the money. I taught the class. You know what? This is really too much. Why am I doing everything?
Oh, yeah.
can't do this anymore. Like, and we had, like, there would be 50 people here. So they would come and they would bring lunch, and like everyone wanted to come, but nobody wanted to be responsible. So they, I can't do it anymore. I'm quitting. So we were
Mm-hmm.
already, so one day of the week was this school group, and another day of the week was Story of the World. So for someone who's trying to be academic like me, there's not many days left for my kids to actually learn, because you do actually have to stay home if you're homeschooling and actually do the hard work as well as the fun. So that had fizzled out. But what happened was so after we've done Story of the World 4 times, and we started our Tapestry of Grace year, a new co-op began in Owen Sound, which is 30 minutes away, but it's a city. Well, a city. You wouldn't consider it a city, but for us, it's a city. And I told the people, I said, if you start a co-op, I know 50 people will come. They will come. They know it's just a couple of people getting together. So it was called Aim High, and it was just beginning. And we decided, like, somehow Tammy and I got on the board for that. Imagine us with our ideas and being bossy. We said, what we really need is some structure. Let's have different ages. So something for the young people, the middle-aged people. Now our kids are even older, right? So let's have 3 things happen. There was a gym. So one thing can be gym, and then another thing and another thing. So we'll have 2 things that we teach. And so we would go and find teachers. Sometimes it was art lessons, and sometimes we had a lady who wanted to teach science, but she was a school teacher and she didn't understand homeschool kids, and it was all about writing down the science experiment. It was boring as all that. They did not like that at all. But we would have 3 different options, and the children would rotate 1, 2, 3. Like one would just go around. So you teach it 3 times. So that was Aim High, and that happened up in Owen Sound at the same time that our Tapestry of Grace co-op, which is way heavier duty workload than the Story of the World one. The kids are expected to do homework now for it happen, so it was going to get a bit overwhelming for us. But in that year, my daughter Bethany is now in grade 8. Is that true? Maybe it's a couple years in. So we did it for a couple years. So Bethany's in grade 8, and she said, I really want to do a play. I mean, she's already made a movie, The Trojan War, but she wanted to make a play of Peter Pan. And so she said, what we could do is we can get some friends who come to Aim High already, and we'll add a couple more people like we've done in the past. And we'll go to Aim High in the morning, and then we'll bring lunch, and we'll stay for the afternoon. We'll practice her play. So that picture that you just popped up there with the boat, that is the cast of Peter Pan. So she, in grade 8, wrote the play, the whole script, and came up with all the costumes. Well, Tammy's kids were in on it too, so we had the use of all their great costumes. Part of it was filmed at a local house, and that was we had a special celebration at the end of the year for our Aim High, where an opportunity for kids to showcase their work, because you want that. Like, what are you missing at public school, right? There's no public speaking, nothing to bring grandma and grandpa to. So we would have a year-end celebration where they would do like presentations. Maybe their children would sing something. If they've been learning to play an instrument, they would do it there. And the play was part of that as our year-end ceremony. So that's what that was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those year-end celebrations are really important.
Yeah, and it was we'd had them all along with the other groups. Like the group that met at my house, we also had a year-end celebration. We would use our church and what the kids had done a play for that as well, because those types of things you can't do with your family by yourself at home, right? You need extra people.
Yeah.
And one of the things I felt was, if you're going to have a co-op, like my kids need friends. I have 4 of them, so I need friends of all these different ages. And if they're each going to have a friend, then that's going to be quite a few people. And you wanted there to be something for everybody to do all the time. So it starts getting a bit bigger and bigger, right? I was asking my son, he's 18, the one that's at home with us now, what his favorite memories from co-op was. And he said he really liked Aim High because it had phys ed. He really liked the sports component of it, because I am not at all sportsy.
Yeah.
And he remembers the history a bit. But,
sorry to interrupt. Okay. There are so many benefits to co-ops, as you have shown in your examples. I sent out a short poll in our Spark Homeschool Parents Facebook group asking why families like to participate in co-ops. 50% of the responses were, my children like learning with others, and it's important for them to learn how to act in social situations. So that is a very important benefit of co-ops. The second was I need a sense of community. So us as parents who educate our children at home, the importance of having a community and being in community with each other. Then there was another response who was a little bit more elaborate. She says co-ops provide an opportunity for children to learn from multiple people with varying gifts. And you shared lots of examples of that. The excitement that another parent shows for a subject I may struggle with helps to lessen the educational load for me and encourages the children with a role model in a subject I might not appreciate. So such an important thing. And like you say, when in your case, the athletics is not something maybe that you would have spent a lot of time on, but your children were involved in a co-op where another parent or paid person was really passionate about athletics. And that was important for your son. Yeah. I also put in another option, but nobody seemed to think this was important for a co-op, but maybe because a lot of our members are new to homeschooling, but maybe you can relate to this. I thought at different stages in my journey of educating my children at home, it was very important also to have some time apart from my children. And I found in some of those co-ops where I had the opportunity to leave my children, that was an important aspect of a co-op for myself. Nobody else in our group felt that was important yet, but
it certainly is a bonus for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of the benefits. Some more benefits from homeschooling. You nicely put together. Oh no, sorry. The PDF attachment that we have is on something else. But yeah, let's talk about some of those benefits.
Okay. Yeah, I think that some of the benefits are, again, having a different teacher. Now, I had mentioned way back at the beginning, I thought it was important for my children to see that sometimes you have to sit in a circle and listen to someone else talking. I think that's very important. I know in my Sunday school class, I've had children who I know are homeschooled, and like, especially the oldest, or if you're an only child, there's never really a time for you to have to be quiet and say nothing because, like, who are you waiting for? You're the only one there. So you want to ask something, you just ask it because, well, it's just you and your mom, it's you and your dad. But I think it's really important to learn that sometimes you have to wait for your turn, and it's actually not all about you. It's sometimes someone else's turn. Another thing I think is you can be a little bit of friendly competition. Now, these co-ops I've talked about, we're not overly academic in their focus. I mean, history is like learning a topic, but not necessarily showing your skill and mastery. Though as we got into the tapestry of grace, it got more and more like that. And then things started to unravel a little bit as we expected more of the kids, and they weren't all up for the task. But I think sometimes seeing that you're not the only one, to me that was really important. My children know they're not the only ones that are homeschooled. And now we can have recess too. So you also have recess. So it's something to talk about. Like their friends at school are out talking about these things. They don't know what they mean. So I think that's good. Different teaching styles. Having somebody critique your work.
Oh, yes.
So that's, I know I'm taking way too long talking about things.
Oh, no.
So there's one other slide I had. One of the other things, and again, this is an idea from Story of the World. One of the other ways of celebrating a unit in your writing stream was actually to write a newspaper. So once again, it's like, okay, here's something we could do with other people. So I would corral extra people to join us. And it's like, okay, we're going to write a newspaper. So now this is actually work. This isn't just fun anymore. You're going to actually do some real work. And what I did the last time, well, not the first, the second and third times that we did this, so these are like 3 different years, is I pretended that I was a newspaper editor, and I was going to hire writers. So my daughter and her friend made money out of Salto. So we had our giggles and laughs and smileys. And we actually had a contract where I wrote up the contract that I was going to hire them as my writers. I was going to pay them 5 smileys a week, and they had to provide me with one well-written article, and I would edit it. It would come back with red pen, and the expectation was that they would send it back to me better. It had to be typed. We had all sorts of extra bonuses for things, but some of the mums weren't comfortable with the writing aspect. And I said, well, I can critique that. I'm okay with that part. And so that was a gift that I felt I could give to them. And then we had the kids actually put it together. They actually did the digital setting up the newspaper. Each of the older kids got an aspect to that to do. So there was, again, feedback from somebody, not that I have specialist education in writing, but I can spot a grammatical error pretty decently.
Yeah.
So that's another option, a benefit from co-ops. And then you have a neat product. Like the one family, the company that he worked for paid for the printing of our newspaper. So each child got their own copy. That was our very first one. And it's,
nice.
I'm not sure how many pages long is it. 32 pages long.
Woo.
Our very first newsletter. So that was pretty neat. So each family had something unique to contribute. So that's another benefit. And it's just something to break up the day, something to look forward to. It's like Thursdays were our favorite day of the week. Or then once AIM High started, that was not a favorite day of the week.
Yeah. Your AIM High sounds like something that we called SHEP in Ottawa.
Okay.
That has come and gone over the years, where we had, middle school, high school children. We had science and history in the afternoons, art and a gym class in the mornings, or rotated depending on, a lot of work. But when you get a few families together that are happy to help and then bring others who are just interested in dropping off their children, then they pay a little bit more, but you work it out. Yeah, some great options. You did this talk at a recent homeschool conference, so you have a slide about the benefits. Let's just take a look at that in case we missed some of those.
I think I got most of those. I mean, the idea of teaching to your interest, I didn't have to teach for that. Someone else could do that.
New activities.
So at AIM High, we had someone teach like hairdressing, various different things. Getting into the house. I know some homeschooling moms really are very shy and don't want to leave the house, but sometimes you do have to go out. Like you have to live in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be probably what I would say are the benefits.
And then also very important to consider the pitfalls. We are very quick to share all the beautiful experiences that we've had educating our children at home, but anyone who's done it is also the first to admit that it's not always fun and games, and there are some things, sometimes it doesn't go quite straight. What are some of the pitfalls that you have here? Insurance, that's something.
Yes.
I'll just mention that in Ottawa we have Rideau Valley Home Educators Association, and if you're a member of that association and your participants are all members, then the activity is insured, which is a huge benefit of our local association. So check that out if you are members of an association too.
Yeah, that is huge.
Sorry.
I was going to say what happened to us is churches were willing to take us on as a ministry of the church. So we were under their insurance policy, but that meant we had to all do through their whole protection plan. I mean, you have to think about that. You have to make sure that the children are safe. So a plan to protect, we all had to have police checks. But I mean, that's very wise to do anyways.
Mm-hmm. Especially when you have a lot of involvement from other adults. Another thing you have is interpersonal relationships. We think because we have so much in common with other parents or families that educate their children at home that we're all going to get along together just wonderfully, but that doesn't always happen. I'm sure you have lots of examples.
Different ideas of what's appropriate play, how to discipline children. So back when we had our Story of the World co-op and the kids would come and play, their actual favorite game was actually Slaves and Orphans, which I guess some people look down on. They would lock each other up in the shed. And we had like one mom that was coming for the afternoon co-op. She's absolutely horrified. She said, well, you know what, these are real things, but so how to discipline your children. Then there's also the belief system. Like most of our co-ops were
Yeah.
specifically from a Christian perspective, and we really wanted to keep it as being a God honoring thing, that our teaching would be in line with what the Bible
Mhm.
teaches. But we wanted to be open to people who weren't necessarily Christians. So how do you do that? Like as a co-op, you have to help, but you can only teach if you agree with the statement of faith. It gets really
Yeah.
tricky. And then
Good
you have
thing.
people wanting to go this way versus that
Yeah.
way.
A
And the
lot
kids,
of great conversations need to be had before you even get started, eh?
yeah, for
Mm-hmm.
sure.
Yeah. And
Um,
then, sorry,
that parenting
different.
styles is sort of there. Time commitment, it takes time, especially if you're the teacher. And somehow I ended up being a teacher all the time. I guess because I love it. But travel, like for us, we had to go, unless it was at my house, then I just had to clean it. But it does, you have to leave the house and you have to be able to get there. Takes energy to do it. Sometimes the quality of teaching, like are you folding paper and cutting it across? Or are you teaching another language or how to do a practical skill? You want to know that what you're going to get is what you're hoping for.
Yeah. Actually, I'm thinking of a beautiful example. At the time in this middle school, high school program that we had a parent volunteer teaching the basics of photography. It was such a great experience for a lot of the children that were involved that we hired a photographer, a, a teacher who taught photography as her job. We did that for the following 2 years. And at the time, I would say my children were lukewarm towards the teaching, but I was organizing it, so they continued to participate. But my one son now is a beautiful photographer and has since gone to that teacher for various workshops. And just a hobby for now. He does have one photograph published in a book. Um, but that you never know. When I know very little to none about photography, but that co-op environment really opened up and gave opportunities to all of my children. And it was my one son who just jumped on it as his way of expressing his creativity. So beautiful things can come out of co-ops.
Yeah, actually, the art teacher that we had, she came for, we had her for about 10 years, I think. And my two daughters both ended up with an art degree. And they're
Ah,
very talented artists. And our son that's an architect is also a very talented artist as well. So that all
yeah.
came from our co-op because I like art, but I'm not any good at drawing. So we just hired someone to teach. So sometimes those teachers that aren't us maybe are the ones that inspire them. We do the grunt
Oh,
work. Someone's got to be the cracking the whip for the math and the reading and all that stuff, right? And we
yeah.
get the short end of the stick sometimes.
Which is probably a topic of another conversation.
Yeah.
You also put together as part of your workshop a PDF about how to start a co-op. I'm going to put that onto our, I guess I can do that into our comments. I'll figure that out. So we're going to make that available for everybody also, how to start. And there's some great information in that, so I thank you for putting that together. I also wanted to mention you have southavenpress.ca. I mentioned at the beginning, and it's very clear after everybody hearing that you are very creative. So I encourage people to visit southavenpress.ca and see some of the exciting things that you have available there that really could help with co-oping or other aspects of educating their children. So congratulations on that
Thank you.
and that whole learning experience for you. Yeah. We could continue talking about co-ops and our experiences. Clearly, you have loved so many aspects of your years of educating your children at home. So thank you very much for sharing, and your enthusiasm for gathering families together and creatively teaching them is very infectious. So thanks for that, Sherine.
I'm glad I could be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I also just wanted to say that at Spark Homeschool Parent, I'm committed to providing an encouraging, non-judgmental community where we can talk openly about our questions and our doubts, our fears about educating our children at home. I will be here again next week with another Facebook Live, Friday, 1 p.m. And as homeschoolers, we can help our children find that spark that ignites their learning. So thanks again for listening. Thanks, Sherine, for joining me in this great conversation.
Okay, take care.